Welcome back, everybody. I mean, if you don't recognize the voice, it's Rob speaking. My picture here in the slide deck, the man behind the mask. As you guys know, I've been helping out with Take Charge for, oh boy, almost 14, 15 years now. Dr. O and I started this way back, I think, in 2008 or 9. So it's been quite some time. And it's been 3 years since we've done a Take Charge session, which is entirely too long. We've missed all of our graduates, so we're absolutely thrilled that we've got a good attendance here. I think we have almost 100 people online for our session for tonight. So just a couple of things I want to share before we get started. We've had a number of people reach out asking if this session is going to be recorded because they couldn't attend, but they really want to be able to catch it. So yes, we are recording the session. So just keep that in mind. Don't think it's going to be a big concern because we're just going to be recording my slide deck, Dr. O and myself. Everybody else is pretty much muted. I think the questions are going to be coming in a chat channel. So just keep that in mind. We are going to be recording this. It's going to get hosted up on our Take Charge YouTube page, right? And we will send out the address for that in one of our email blasts from MailChimp in the next little bits. We used to have the takechargeonline.ca website, but that went down a little while ago. We've still got all our content recorded, so we want to share that with you guys. So look for that in the next little bits, right? So without further ado, let us get started. So welcome back, everybody. I already said that part, which is great. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. As I said, we are going to be recording these sessions. We're going to be talking about exercise and behaviors and all this kind of good stuff. That's what we do here in cardiac rehab. But remember, a lot of this stuff is just for a general purpose, right? So if you have any very specific questions that are personal and apply just to you, ideally, of course, the best person to ask those questions to is your own personal care healthcare provider. They know you better and they can give some good customized, tailored answers to you that are going to suit your specific health situation and any goals that you might have. All right. We're going to try and handle as many questions as we can. Ideally, we're going to try and save as many of them as we can to the end of the session. Although Marissa, who's also helping run the Take Charge for the last few years, is going to be trying to field some of the other questions in the box. So some might get answered just in the chat, and Dr. O and myself will handle some other ones verbally. All right. We'll do our best to try and answer everything, but if we have a lot of questions and they go long, we might not get all of them. All right. If you do put them in there, we might be able to answer them after the session. Right. So do keep that in mind. All right. So let's get started. COVID's been around for over 3 years, and it's affected so many aspects of our life, our society, economics, healthcare, absolutely everything, including cardiac rehab. So just because I know you guys are always interested about what's going on here, when COVID first hits, we ended up suspending the program only for about a week or so. And then after that week, the cardiac rehab supervisors made a point of reaching out to all active patients on the program. And we made about 1 million phone calls every week, it felt like, just keeping in touch with everybody and trying to keep them excited and motivated to continue to do all those good heart healthy behaviors that you guys know are super, super important. But initially, we weren't sure how long this was going to go. So, the phone calls lasted for a little while, and then we said we've got to try and get the program up and running. So we did a fully remote program for a little while, where new participants in the program participated, but everything was done over the phone. They never came on site. And then as year 2 and year 3 started rolling around, we started bringing people back on site. But the program today, January 2023, is different than what a lot of you might remember back in 2020. So the program currently is about 4 months long. We still have some on-site visits, but they're limited. It's only 4 on-site visits with a focus on exercise. And then after the on-site visits, we're typically shifting gears and moving into remote sessions, just like we're doing tonight. And the focus during the remote sessions is largely on education. So the program's it's different. It still works pretty good. The classes are an awful lot smaller. It's one of the reasons why the program's a little bit shorter. We're seeing less people in our groups. So one supervisor will only work with about 6 patients at a time now. So a lot more intimate, better opportunity to meet the other people in the classes, better opportunity to ask questions, more time with your cardiac rehab supervisor. But because of that, we just got to put people through a little bit quicker. So the programs are a little bit shorter. So very, very different. But the principles, it's all the same, right? You guys know that. Program started back in 1968. Day one, it was exercise, exercise, exercise. The heart is a muscular pump. Only way to make it work better is to do some good exercise. So that still goes on. And of course, we like to do the education. Now, one of the things that I hear through the grapevine is that a lot of people, when COVID happened, they stayed indoors. That was the advice. That's what all the healthcare people were saying. Isolate, don't hang out with people, don't go to public areas. And that's well and good if you've got exercise equipment in your home, but a lot of people don't. So a lot of people in the last 3 years have kind of fallen off the wagon from an exercise point of view. So what I'd like to do for about the next 15 or 20 minutes is convince you that now, if you're not exercising, is the time to get started again. All right. So just to give you a little bit of motivation, why? Why should we exercise? And you shouldn't be doing it because your doctor says it's good for you, or Dr. O or me or anybody says. You should be doing it because you know it's good for you and it helps you accomplish some goals. All right, so let's just kind of skim through some of the things that exercise will do for you. All right, so we know it makes you live longer, lets you live independently longer. It's a really great way to burn the stress hormones out of the body. If you have had a bad day, a walk at the end of the day is a great way to offset that stuff. Thins the blood. That's very important. You know, so many of you guys are on aspirin. We don't want thick, pasty blood. Well, exercise helps thin the blood, right? Tylenol, some of those medications, they're constipating. Exercise helps with that too. All those activities of daily living, there's cooking, cleaning, chasing the grandkids, shoveling the snow, any of that kind of stuff. All of that becomes easier with exercise. And as we said, it makes your heart a stronger, more efficient pump. The reason you live longer is because that heart becomes a stronger, more efficient pump. Okay. But there's more. All right. So we know that exercise also decreases the odds that you're going to develop any heart disease, right? That you might have a stroke, that you develop diabetes. Wonderful way to manage high blood pressure, bone density, arthritis, cancer, mental health, including Alzheimer's, sexual dysfunction. You can improve your blood flow, which is good for a lot of things, folks. All right. Improve varicose veins, helps manage any obesity. So it helps you achieve a good, healthy body weight. Makes your breathing better, makes the blood flow in the periphery better. So there's even more benefits. And it keeps going, right? Control body weight, diabetes, lower your cholesterol, improve your mental health. This one was huge, absolutely huge with COVID. Depression was going through the roof with all the isolation and health-related anxiety, financial consequences. Depression was massive. Stress was massive. Exercise, great way to help manage that. Helping with arthritis. A lot of people, they got sore knees, so they think the best thing to do is not to exercise. No, that's not true. You want to improve your arthritis, you should be exercising. All right. Helps with immune function, HIV and AIDS, manage blood pressure. Trying to quit smoking, exercise helps with that too. It helps with your self-discipline to avoid lighting up. Improves cancer, lung disease, peripheral vascular disease. That's like 3 slides. That's a fair bit. And you know what? There's even more. Right? It helps with your ability to sleep, helps you concentrate, memory. One of my patients was having some issues with some Alzheimer's, and his geriatrician called me up and he said, Rob, I know you're a cardiac rehab program, but when this patient walks, his memory is light years better. Make him walk more. So we know it helps with memory. Makes you feel better about yourself, self-control, sense of well-being, gives you more energy, improves blood flow everywhere through your body. Big one, quality of life, big happy face on that one. That's important. Right? Fitness, strength, insulin sensitivity, and it makes all the arteries in your body function better. There's so many things that exercise do. Maybe not every single one of those applies to you, but I'm willing to bet, doesn't matter who's out there, a bunch of them do apply to you. Okay. Now, what about COVID-19? I want to share a little story with you guys. Um, when COVID first started, there was an email that came across my desk from the American College of Sports Medicine. Right. And this is a pretty big organization that helps healthcare providers provide exercise programming for people with chronic conditions. So in the cardiac rehab world, they're a pretty big group. And one of their editors put out an editorial piece, and it was like, you know, exercise improves immune function. And they were thinking, if you exercise regularly, will that protect you against COVID? And it was an editorial, and it was in the early days of COVID, so we had no evidence, right? It was all just theory, but it was an interesting theory. So just last week, an email came across my desk, and I won't lie, the email kind of made me chuckle a little bit. The heading of it was, "Are your patients using this anti-COVID secret weapon?" And I thought, great, that's right by the email about the Nigerian prince who wants me to hold $10 million for him. But it was my work email, and I don't get a lot of spam, so I opened it up and I read it, and it was a letter that came from the Centers for Disease Control in the States, the CDC. And you can see a couple of the little highlights, two-page news release here. But they said that any level of physical activity will provide some protection from COVID-19. And they said as little as 10 minutes of exercise per week. Okay, so even 10 minutes per week provided some degree of protection. Now, they did go on to say that optimally, the best protection is provided in individuals that are reaching the targets. Right? And for anybody who's listened to me in the last little while, the target for exercise is a minimum of 150 minutes per week. And the research was showing that if you can do that, it dramatically improved your outcomes with regards to COVID. To what kind of points? Well, they found that people who did absolutely no exercise and that when they got COVID, they were 91% more likely to end up in the hospital, right? And if you did end up in the hospital with COVID and you were a non-exerciser, you were 291% more likely to die than somebody who is exercising on a regular basis. All right, so you can add this to the list of all those darn benefits that exercise provides. All right, so hopefully it goes without saying that everybody should be exercising on a regular basis. All right, now with that thought in mind, if you've fallen off the wagon, how do we get back on the wagon? All right, so you guys know that we're big fans of prescribing exercise through what's called the FIT principle. Okay, and you guys remember FITT, the acronym FIT stands for frequency, intensity, time, and type. So how often should I work out? How hard? How long? And what should I do? This acronym's been around forever, guys, for like decades and decades and decades. It's really old. It's still absolutely world class because it asks the important questions. And if you can answer the questions that FIT is asking, you'll have a very well-rounded, robust exercise prescription. All right, so let's just take a closer look at that. How often should you work out? I won't lie. I like 30 minutes 5 times per week. All right, we want to try and get to at least 150 minutes per week. 5 times 30 gets you there. Right, but generally speaking, we say 3 to 5 days per week. Most days of the week is a good thing. All right, now, if you haven't exercised in a while and you're thinking about starting up, you don't need to try and target 5 days a week right off the bat. There's nothing wrong with starting off with just 2 or 3 days a week and do that for a couple of weeks. Change the routine, see how the body feels, see how you can fit that into your schedule. And then if 2 to 3 days per week works, maybe try 1 or 2 weeks of 3 to 4 days. And if you can get that work in 4 to 5, gold star, you're going to be fantastic. Right? But we really want to try and work out most days of the week. So 5 is really a good target to aim for, building up to it gradually. Okay, so that's the F. Frequency, how often? How hard? So this is an interesting one. All right. And I know many of you guys have been through the program, so you know how much we value our exercise fitness test, the cardiopulmonary exercise test on the treadmill or the bike, where we put that lovely tube in your mouth and we measure how much oxygen you breathe, and then we can prescribe the exercise very, very accurately, very, very precisely. All right. So if you've had a recent test, you'll have some guidelines and some heart rates to targets. If you're a graduate of the program and you haven't had a test in a while, you know you can come in and have one. We do offer what's called the Pulse Check program, and this is an opportunity for graduates to come in and have a fitness test. Right? It can only be done once per year, and you got to get your family doctor to refer you. You can reach out to Marissa or myself later in the week, and we'll send you the referral form for that. But it's an opportunity to get in and have your fitness level measured so that we can prescribe the intensity accurately. But you don't need that test to get started. All right. Being able to walk and exercise at a pace where you can have a conversation. Right. I always say if you're trying to walk, what you want to target is a pace that just slightly affects the way you speak. Right, you guys know I love to talk, right? That doesn't surprise any of you. I love the sound of my own voice. But if I'm talking and I find that I have to give myself a little bit of a pause after every few words, that's probably kind of like the upper limit of my intensity. That's really what I would like to work towards, right? I don't necessarily need to start there. I can start off slower, but as I get into the routine and things start going well, you do want to push yourself a little bit. All right. Remember, exercise is a little bit of work. So you want to go at the point where you're pushing yourself just a little bit, and that'll really increase the pumping strength of the heart. It'll increase the heart's ability to deliver oxygen rich blood. And that is such a big, important part of exercise. Okay. And also, of course, listen to your body. You haven't done an awful lot of structure stuff in 1, 2, 3 years. Trying to do an hour a day, 5 days a week probably is not great. Your body will scream at you. So when you get those aches and pains, feel free to back off a little bit. Okay. It's important that we listen and respect our body. How long should you exercise? Well, the CDC, when they were talking about COVID protection, quoted it. They said 150 minutes per week. That is the minimum target if you have a chronic condition. Heart disease, stroke, diabetes, cancer, all of those associations all push for a minimum of 150 minutes per week. When we take a look at risk curves, you find that the risk of a sedentary lifestyle really starts to go away at 150 minutes, right? It does improve a little bit beyond that. So 180 minutes a week is better than 150, 210, up to about an hour, 5 times a week. So 300 minutes, right? Once you go beyond 300 minutes, you don't really get too many more benefits at that point. It's not necessarily dangerous. You're just not getting too much more unless you really enjoy it. All right. Then there's all the mental health benefits to it. But from a cardiovascular point of view, 150 is the minimum target that you want to work towards. 300 is that maximum. Once again, remember, guys, it's a target. Okay. You don't need to start with 150 minutes a week. Start off with 10, 15 minutes a day, 3, 4 days per week, and think to yourself, okay, as I can handle this, I'm going to push myself in a couple of weeks, go a little bit more often, go a little bit longer. Okay, small little increments is really the way you want to do it. That way, you know your body's going to be able to handle it, and you guys will give yourself positive feedback when you do that. Setting a small goal, accomplishing that goal, feeling good about accomplishing your goal makes it more likely that you're going to set another goal, as opposed to saying, well, I got to go 300 minutes, I'm only at like 60. It can be overwhelming and discouraging. You don't want to do that. Stack the deck in your favor, set yourself up to win. Okay. And then in terms of what kind of exercise that you do, you guys know, like we're big fans of walking, right? For our patient population, walking works really, really well. Most people can go at a pace which is going to challenge your heart and your lungs to a level that it is going to improve your fitness level. But it doesn't always have to be walking. The key thing that you're looking for is you want to do a physical activity that uses enough muscle mass to get your heart rate going a little bit, to get your breathing up a little bit. So walking counts, as I said, biking, swimming, elliptical training, treadmill, all of these are going to work very, very well. Okay. So do something that you enjoy. Do something that's easy to do, right? Walking is very easy to do, which is why it's so popular, all right? So that's in terms of the mode and in terms of what you need to be doing, right? And if you follow those general guidelines, you should be able to get into a decent exercise program without needing help from a cardiac rehab supervisor here in rehab, without talking to your doctor, your cardiologist. You should be able to do that on your own, okay? Now, I know a lot of you guys are exercising. I saw some of the names on my list. I speak with you guys regularly. I know you're doing your stuff on a regular basis, but I won't lie. When we take a look at a lot of our patients, they walk like nobody's business. They're super compliant with the aerobic training, the aerobic aspect of their program. But exercise is more than just making sure you have your heart health. Okay, so a couple of other things that you should be looking to do is mix it up with a few other types of fitness as well. Are you working, and this is a big one, on your strength? A lot of people, as we get older, we just don't work on our strength, right? So adding in a good strength conditioning routine is a wonderful thing to do if you've already got a good established program that doesn't include it. Right. And if you're wondering what can we do, I should have put this slide in, but I didn't. If you go to our website, www.cardiaccollege.ca, look for the Get Active tab, resistance training. We have got, I think it's 21 or 24 videos that show you how to do resistance training. And they are all perfectly safe and appropriate for our cardiac patients. All right. So that's something to take a look at. If you've been doing a lot of walking, maybe try switching to a bike or vice versa. All right. Our bodies are really great at getting super efficient if we do the same thing over and over and over. Sometimes switching up how we're doing things just puts enough of a wrinkle in terms of your fitness to move it up a little bit more. Right. So switching the mode is not a bad idea either. Even if it's just switching where you're walking. If you're always on a track, maybe go outside where there's a little bit of a hill. Push yourself up a little bit of a hill. So mixing it up is a very good way just to keep your fitness level on its toes, right? And that's a good important thing to do. Okay, so aerobic, adding strength, flexibility is another one as well. Okay, doing the stretching. A lot of people love to stretch when they're hurts, but a lot of people don't do stretching on a regular basis. So that's something else to take a look at. And we have some good stretching exercises once again on our website. Okay. So mixing it up for the people that are exercising is a good thing. But the important thing is you got to make sure you exercise. Okay. Um, every day, try and do something that makes yourself a little bit short of breath, a little bit puffy. Okay. If you can do that, that will make a difference. That will help drive your fitness level up. And that's what it's all about. Okay. I think that's my last slide in my part. Let me just see. Yeah, there we go. Right. So that's a little bit about getting started. And if you're doing something, just look to mix things up. Now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the microphone over to our fearless medical director, Dr. O, another face that you guys are all very, very familiar with, and he'll share his side of things for a little bit. Paul, over to you.
Terrific. Thanks, Rob. It's always a pleasure to listen to you present so thoughtfully, high degree of motivation. I'm sure there are many people who would agree with me that we just want to get up and start moving. So thanks so much, Rob. Let me offer a welcome to everyone. A Happy New Year, dare I say, even though we're into the second half of the month. But it is indeed a pleasure to be with you. I echo Rob's sentiments that it's been way too long since we have last seen each other. And it's really great that we can get together, at least in a virtual format. I'm delighted to see that there's almost 200 people on this event, Rob. So we're in wonderful company, and I'm sure many like-minded individuals that want to embrace this new year. Great information that we've heard thus far about getting active in particular. And we want to couple that great information about specific physical activity with some ideas, some concepts, um, some food for thought, so to speak, about how we might actually work on our own behaviors. I'm very grateful to our wonderful colleague, Jessica Nguyen, who does a lot of thinking and activity in this space around health behavior change. And she is responsible. I'll give her the credit for putting this material together that we're going to share. And the fun thing you can do is figure out what are we trying to show you with every image on on the slides. And here we're talking about maybe what's good for you, like going for a walk, as Rob would like us to do, but also facing a little bit of resistance. The objectives for the next 20 minutes or so is to understand the functions of you and your role as a health manager. You're the CEO of your own health, as our own Dr. Ratav loves to say. Kind of driving you along the way is understanding why it's so bad to not move, to not change, to not get active, the consequences of inertia, and to explore strategies like what kind of works on how to change and how to change for good in particular. So let's do a primer, kind of basic 101 on looking after yourself. And it's very easy for us or for others just to say, hey, go change, go get active. And that's sometimes the role that we learn in healthcare, that we just kind of do medical management, tell you what to do. But we know it's much more complex, that there's many factors that come into managing health, and you're the one who has to deal with these various aspects. Not only is it medical, physical, things that we do, but there's also the strong emotional components that govern how we act, how we behave, how we prioritize, and the roles that we take on in our families, in our work, in our society. So this becomes a much more complex equation, and the heart is indeed very closely connected to our brain, our psyche. There, we of course acknowledge and recognize that you are the most important person in this equation. If we think of managing any kind of condition, whether it's heart disease or diabetes or mental health, that the amount of time that you spend with any healthcare practitioner is minuscule in the scheme of all of the waking hours through the course of the year. And indeed, we'd be generous if we said that 1% of care is kind of driven by your healthcare team. 99% or more is indeed managed by you. So we need to help kind of think about this and also provide some tools. One of them is education, and we're delighted that so many of you were able to join us today. And I think you'll recognize that addressing health literacy. So we're familiar with literacy about reading and writing and arithmetic and those sorts of things, but health literacy is also another really important concept that can really help us achieve better health. Um, we know that people who have low health literacy, unfortunately, have bad experiences, like a doubling in risk of dying. Um, Practical things on a day-to-day basis, like understanding medications and how to take them and recognizing side effects. If we can actually address low literacy, then we can actually improve safety and outcomes and managing health behaviors. What's the state of the landscape? Well, about half of the population in Ontario unfortunately have low health literacy. About a quarter are moderate, and another quarter have high health literacy. So sufficient facility with kind of managing these sorts of things to really excel. So education is fundamental, knowledge transfer, and then putting that into action are things that will really help along the way. And this is why one of our very important missions for our program, and indeed our leadership around the world, is to work on health literacy and education for all of us. Change, managing health is not an easy thing. And again, it is easy for us just to say things: eat better, move more, don't smoke, take your pills, do all of those things. But we recognize and acknowledge and actually need to address and respect that there are many things in play. Who we are, our sex and gender roles have an important play, where we are on the age spectrum. Socioeconomic status can affect whether we can engage in certain things or affect change. As new Canadians or established Canadians, we may have very different experiences, and where we live, not only in Toronto, but around the country, then the locations around us may have a big influence. Health literacy we spoke to already, and the folks around us and the people that we work with and influence can have an important factor. And then finally, we come to some of the traits that are inside of us, like motivation and confidence. Most Canadians, the vast majority of Canadians, feel like they are very responsible for their health. So this should be an easy construct, right? We are in control. We are masters of our destiny. But what is really going on? Again, these are sobering kinds of statistics that come from surveys of Canadians. And for instance, if we think about physical activity, and I think Rob has pointed out that this is a select group, highly motivated, highly confident individuals, and we'd love to kind of bottle the essence of who you are, because you're clearly different than most Canadians, because most Canadians are not active. And for instance, 80% don't meet that physical activity guideline of 150 minutes per week. Or 2/3 of Canadian are not consuming more than five servings of fruits and veg daily. And we know that sometimes these things are complicated, again, socioeconomic barriers and others. But it seems like the majority of this country can benefit from a health shakeup. Rob already went through in wonderful detail and in a very compelling way why inactivity is a bad thing. So the cost of inertia is really, really high for a whole spectrum of conditions. And the flip of that is that if we embrace our health, not only physical activity that is represented by the pairs that are moving along, but if we can stop smoking and eat in a healthy way, and gosh, if we got into that alcohol story, maybe we'll park that for another time. But we were all struck by the headlines yesterday about the new low risk drinking guidelines that would really challenge what we thought before, that maybe there is no real safe amount of alcohol consumption. If you're going to drink, less than two per week is kind of the newer upper limit. So, for a debate for another time, but if we think of this as a whole package, the outcomes are striking, that we can prevent 80% of the early deaths in Canada and indeed around the world. So there's a lot of power in our hands, and it's worth thinking about our health behaviors and reasons to change. We need to develop a strategy to break from the pack so that we can actually do these things for ourselves and others. So changing health behaviors can be very subtle. Everything needs to be purposeful. Things just don't happen. We need to kind of think about this and shape it. And here's five ideas that Jess has articulated for us to really shape our health for the future and turn spaghetti into beautiful macaroni. There you go. And we're going to go through these five in order, but let's talk about the why, understanding goals and doing better self-monitoring, managing barriers, and thinking for the future around relapses. And these are the underpinnings of how we design our programs in cardiac rehab. They're also the underpinnings of initiatives that we've taken across the country and indeed around the world in helping people get healthier. Again, it's more than just say, go, eat better, move more, stop smoking. Let's have a plan for this. Understanding the why is always a great place to start. Those of you who are fans of authors like Simon Sinek, he's the guy that wrote the book Start With Why, understand that this is probably the most important question. People don't buy what you sell. They buy why you sell. From a kind of a business sort of acumen. Why is this change important for me, personal, to make this change now? And how is it going to affect me, positively or negatively? And what is the reason? What is my purpose in doing things? This is really, really why we need to start. Sometimes we jump to, I'm going to do something without really understanding or declaring what your why is, and it may not work. Thinking about the motivation that will help drive the change. And in the psychosocial literature, there are these motivators that are called extrinsic from the outside, or intrinsic that are on the inside. And sometimes we we, even as designers in health, think about all the extrinsic things that we can do. The carrot stick models. We don't like so many sticks, but we do try to scare you. Look, you're going to have bad things happen to you if you don't get active. We might give you carrots, like here's a reward if you actually get active. And those can be helpful to a small degree for a short period of time. When things become embedded, when they speak to your why, when the motivation is intrinsic, this can be vastly more powerful to affect change than not. So we have to start with the why of why this is important and why I should spend the time doing this. Once we've got that down, let's think about how we design and act upon goals, boosting your goal IQ. And there is a great science that's behind behavior. There's lots of books, there's lots of literatures, there's research groups that actually just study behavior. And many of them actually helped us through the pandemic and encouraging societies to change, people to go seek the appropriate medical care that's needed for prevention or therapy. For us who have been through the rehab experience, you will recall that one of the things that we had to do as what we felt was important was set some goals, and smart goals. Remember those specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely activities that we had you actually write down. And when we had really big ideas, we might have asked you to bring it down to something smaller that you can actually get done in the next week, that might be singular, so that you can actually get through it. Because we know that those small successes lead to the sequence of the next success. So return to those and kind of live your life that way. Commit to the action. And sometimes you commit openly to do those things. And in previous sessions, you would have heard us saying, hey, we're going to go do this run together. And it's better when we do it as a group and when we make that public declaration, because we will do it. We will follow through with it. Own the action for yourself, and then do some monitoring and prepare for setbacks. We're going to come back to those things. If you set the goal and if you write it down, you really boost your chance for actually being quite successful. Um, so for the bunny, you're not going to eat all those carrots, even though that they're delicious. You're going to consume one at a time, and let's set a good time frame for that. And actually, if you try to chew off more than you can handle, you'll get into some kind of trouble. One more kind of insight from literature, and we have the privilege of working with a whole bunch of smart women in particular in our program. You will have all met many of them, and they lead wonderful research programs that tell us that it's not the same for everyone. And in particular, it's not the same for men and women for many things, including health behaviors. Men and women may differ quite fundamentally. I mean, we think about goal setting. The patterns around women are that women will set goals that often connect very closely to emotions that are tough, that relate to life. So these are really important, high stakes goals. And when it comes to kind of trying to shake that, they're going to stick to it because they're so emotionally vested, and they're going to be successful in achieving those goals because they are ingrained. The flip of this, men maybe simpler. Can I say that, men? That they can visualize goals, keep them simple, start out with low goal setting. We're pretty good at setting simple things, but we are adaptable. We can learn and we can build on this. But sometimes we may do a disservice when we think about men and women in the same brushstroke and wonder why we aren't on the same pathway, because we're going to get there. We're going to get there differently, and we can learn a lot from each other. Step three in this kind of strategy that's really working is it deals with self-monitoring and how we might get to success. There is a great literature that talks about how we might track our health and why we might track our health. And it says that if we track things, then we will improve our feelings of efficacy and in being successful. We'll raise our awareness about what's actually happening and where we are. You can't Monitor what you can't measure. You've all heard that in the business kind of world. It's true in the health world as well. And really, because we are our own best self managers, we have to give ourselves the tool to self evaluate and do it over again to figure out where we are on the pathway. It inspires us to actually own the issue. It's your goal, not my goal, and it helps us be quite successful in it. There may be something competitive in it. That's the extrinsic side. That's for some people. And it might help us kind of think about what's in our way and how we might need to re-engineer our environment. The minority of folks say tracking's not for me because of a smattering of reasons. But I think for the majority of people, we are actually interested in tracking. And across the bottom panel, the images kind of speak to different things that we might engage in all the time. And you will recall that one of the tools that we employ in our cardiac rehab program is to write down your workouts so that wonderful folks like Rob can actually work through the diary, and Marissa can coach you on how might we move from 3 days to 4 days, or what sort of symptoms or what sort of barriers did you experience. Having that in a diary works extremely well, and folks are going to be kind of more successful down the road. So when we track, um, this is going to be helpful to us. You're in good company. 2 out of 3 Canadians actually do track their health using a wearable device, a phone, a paper diary. And the majority of Canadians will have achieved some success through that tracking. 70% will say they have maintained or improved their health by using some sort of digital tracker. 6 out of 10 will say that they feel more confident. And both men and women equally use these sorts of electronic tracking devices. Um, and across the age spectrum, perhaps there's a bias to younger individuals, but encouragingly, people who are in their more senior years can make use of these trackers as well. And indeed, that's been our experience in our program, that with a bit of orientation, a bit of training, sometimes with help of our family, or when we help family members, that we can get everybody kind of looking back at this. Okay, so to flesh out the concepts around relapse and where behavior goes, we can set a plan, we can set a strategy, we can be successful, but also remember that there's things that might have come along the way as barriers, and how do we come to them? That there certainly are barriers to change. And if we don't identify them, disclose them, acknowledge them, and then importantly, think about what we do about them, then we are probably not going to go very far with our plan. So identification of the barriers is really, really important. And there's different methodologies on how we might work through barriers, where we think of the pros and cons of a certain behavior, of doing the same thing or changing, and does the pain of change how does that compare to the the issues that arise if we stay the same? And that helps us get to this kind of equipoise and maybe move us down the cascade. That's really great. If you stick with it, then you will be successful. And we know that for many things with health behaviors, that there's going to be trial and error and quote failure along the way. If we redefine that and say that there's barriers, there's relapses, and these things are going to occur along the pathway, then we're right on track. And we know that we have to keep doing things over and over before we break through. In the case of smoking, which may be someone's January goal of quitting smoking, the average Canadian adult needs 8 to 30 attempts before they successfully quit smoking, the average being about 13. So when someone tries and fails and tries and fails in their own language, we would say, congratulations, you're right on the path. You're one more step closer to success with quitting if that is your goal. And thinking about relapse, as we said, that when the novelty of doing something new wears off, then we might actually revert back. We might flip onto our backs like a turtle. But think about, and then there's these kind of interesting theories about this. Think about how you get past a relapse. Think about the notion that I actually know what to do to be successful. Relapse was actually along the pathway. My birthday, a holiday, a vacation, Christmas time, something is going to happen along the way where I might change my behavior, but I have the skills to actually be successful in the change that I want to achieve. And I might look around me, and this is why social groups are really important, so that I can see what other people are doing. I can be persuaded by others. I can be persuaded by myself, the positive talk. I got this. I can do this. And I can remember what it feels like to be successful. And this is how we can get past relapses and achieve success. So, health behaviors are not easy. You've all had success in this. You've all perhaps had relapses and bumps on the road. We recognize that one size does not fit all. We are all very different, and if we recognize and kind of think about how we are different and how we can be each successful, change is possible. It's complex, but possible. Return to those goals, those SMART goals, and create them and write them down and share them with others and celebrate the small successes that keep building into the place that we want to be. And to the extent possible, make the healthy choices the easy ones by eliminating barriers, by making the environments right, by having the right people around us. Being flexible and adaptable in our approaches is really important because there is no straight line to success. It's a windy, curvy road, but it's beautiful along the way. And the most important person along the pathway is, of course, you. And we have no doubt that you have been successful. You will continue to be successful. And we are really delighted and privileged to be able to see you along this pathway and share. Okay, that's the formal part. Wanted to end with an opportunity. Is your interest kind of brought up? Did anything resonate with you about being active physically, about the change kinds of models, maybe something about tracking? So we did want to share with you an opportunity. Not only is there an opportunity for education through these types of forums, and we're going to talk more about what else might be coming down the road. Not only is there an opportunity perhaps to engage in an annual stress test, as Rob and Marissa might share with you, there is also an opportunity to engage in some research activities along the way. And one exciting project that we've been able to engage in, Jessica is the research managing lead of this, and she and I work with a couple of other wonderful associates, Simi and Mackenzie. Many of you have actually met the whole team, but some of you may not have. And if you're interested, there is the study that we've given the acronym Heracles to, which stands for Health Metrics. There's the R, and clinical events study. Basically, we're going to use and provide an electronic tracker, in this case, an Apple Watch. And we would ask you to wear that watch on a regular daily basis. And it's going to track your activity and give you feedback and maybe some element of motivation, encouragement about how you are doing through the course of the day. It'll help you achieve the goals that Rob has set out for you of being active, the 150 minutes per week, 30 minutes a day. That's exciting. And if you do that, we think your health trajectory is going to be a positive one. But we would really love to study what the watch might tell us about health, your daily activity, and then what might actually happen down the road with health metrics. We're seeking to recruit about 1,000 people into this study. Thus far, well, this is of this week, 277 people have been recruited into this project across a whole age spectrum from 20 to 91. That's wonderful to see. And there's wonderful representation in the 60 plus cohort, which is really great. 3/4 of folks in the program are men and 25% are women. So we would love to see more people who have had heart experiences into this program. And if you happen to be interested, please email Heracles at uhn.ca. There's a couple of phone numbers, or if you just reach out to any of us, frankly, we can get you connected into the project. So, boy, we've offered you many things today. And are we done yet? No, here's a couple more things. We'll get into Q&A, but I will also offer you this before we get there. So this is one session. We're again delighted that so many of you were able to join us for this one. We'll let you know that we've got many more things in the works. And for next month, February, which is Heart Month, there's a few things that are going on around women and heart disease and increasing awareness. We'll be running a session, an educational session called Cardiovascular Risk Prediction for Women, and that'll be over a lunch hour on the 9th of February. And Robert and Marissa and Jess and I were just quickly brainstorming some other topics that might be of interest. And here's a few. And if you've got more ideas on things that you like to hear about, then again, please do feed that back to us. And we would love to hear what might be of interest and then program this accordingly over the course of the year. All right, coming back to opening this to some questions.
While so let me see. I think Marissa, is there a plan for how we're going to field the questions? Do people have to type them? Marissa is running the show here.
So a couple options. The Q&A tab somewhere on your screen. If you click on that, you can type in your question, and then we'll get it answered. That is an option. Let me see. And Rob, is that your hand that's up, or a different Rob?
It's a different Rob.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. So, Rob, who has your hand up, if you unmute your microphone, you should be able to ask your question.
Is that me?
We gotcha. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for the session. I'm actually had a heart attack 3 months ago, but I'm also a physician, and I'm trying to educate patients now about some of the new things I've learned about with regards to diet, and it's hard to do that in a short time. I wonder if you have some suggestions on what are some of the highlights that would be useful to hear. What about directing people to the cardiac rehab website? So this is a question both as as a patient now and as a physician. How would you suggest transmitting? What are the important highlights if you only have 5-10 minutes amongst many other things to talk about with regards to diet?
I'll let you handle that one, Dr. O.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Rob Bertelink, and thank you, Rob, from the audience for sharing, and thank you for sharing your experience. Love the question, and physicians sometimes are asked many things, or asked to cover many things during the course of an appointment. I like your ideas. Number one, of kind of acknowledging that this may be a longer and nuanced conversation, and sharing some resources. We happen to think that there are great resources on our own website around the eating healthy section. In terms of like specific advice, what we know is that there's a number of different kind of dietary patterns that can be quite helpful for heart health. They happen to be the same dietary patterns that are helpful for diabetes management and for brain health and for cancer prevention. So if we talk about some principles of like Mediterranean or DASH, let's start with the things that we should emphasize: fruits, veggies, fiber. Let's start there. Build our plates accordingly. It's also very consistent with Canada Food Guide, and then we can add in a healthy source of protein, whether that's vegan protein or a piece of chicken, a piece of fish, red meat. Dairy sources of protein. So those would be the simple things. If I only had 1 minute, that's what I would say. Get some more fruits and veggies, get to 5, get some fiber, think about the protein that you're going to have. And then you can also add in the healthy fats. So fats we don't need to stay away from, but we just need good, healthy kinds of fats, the extra virgin olive oils or the fats that come out of fatty fish, for instance. And that's usually a reasonable place to start. The other question, of course, in change is always to reflect back. What is it that the person in front of you might want to embark upon? What is the single thing that they might enact? And I know that, again, we set the simple, smart goal of, can you add in one more fruit or veggie? And it's staggering to find folks that have zero in their diet. So we can move the needle kind of in a continuous fashion. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, next question is coming from the Q&A. Is low impact aerobics as good as walking for health benefits?
I think I can tackle that one, Paul. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a fan of saying, the heart is a wonderful organ, but it's not always so smart. Really, all the heart knows is muscles are moving. I've got to send blood. So if you exercise for 30 minutes and maybe your heart rate is 100 beats per minute, just pulling that number out of thin air, whether that's 100 beats per minute for 30 minutes on a bike or walking or doing low impact aerobics, as far as your heart's concerned, it's all the same. So from a cardiovascular point of view, you're going to get the same kind of benefits. You'll get into some tricky things. If you've got bad knees, maybe you don't want to be doing a jogging program. Maybe it would be better to be on a bike or in the pool or something where you don't have the impact. But in terms of the pure cardiovascular benefits, pretty much all exercise is reasonably interchangeable. And I'll tell you, it's all good for you, for sure. Thank you for the question. Good question.
Okay, Stephen Tanny, you just have to unmute your microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, great. So my question is, are there any kinds of time and intensity guidelines for the strength training? You mentioned of those guidelines for the aerobic, but you didn't say anything about them for the strength training.
Yeah, so the strength training generally we want to try and target about 3 times per week is what we have found. Strength training works on what's called an overload principle. So if you can comfortably lift 10 pounds, we might suggest you lift just a little bit more. So you push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone. The body will respond, or the muscles will respond to being pushed out of that comfort zone by becoming a little bit healthier, a little bit stronger, a little bit more endurance oriented, and all that kind of good stuff. But while they're making those adaptations, they do need a little bit of recovery. So we normally say, exercise the muscles and then give them a good 24 hours to recover from that. So 3 times a week is pretty reasonable. One of our PhD staff here, Dr. Susan Marzolini, has done an awful lot of research into strength training. One of the studies she looked at was frequency of exercise, and she found that, a lot of us are busy. We can't always get 3 days in a week, but if you drop down to just 2 days a week, you get about 80% of the benefits. All right, so 2 to 3 times per week is generally pretty reasonable. You always want to make sure that you've got at least 1 day of rest between lifting sessions. Thank you.
Okay, we will go to the Q&A. From Andrew Lee, last week I read a study that exercise intensity was associated with the progression of coronary atherosclerosis, but not exercise volume. It is noteworthy that very vigorous intensity exercise was associated with significantly higher CAC and calcified plaque progression, whereas vigorous intensity exercise was associated with less CAC progression. We'd love to have your thoughts. Thank you.
Paul, I heard just a very, very little bit about this, but I don't have details on that particular study. Are you familiar with it at all? Otherwise, I can take a little bit of a stab at the little bit I am aware of.
Yeah, Rob, honestly, I don't have the details of the study. I can search while you start the discussion.
Yeah, so I think this was a study taking a look at basically higher intensity and I think higher volume, I believe. Exercise is a U-shaped curve. I always like to think it's kind of like the Goldilocks rule. And everybody remembers the fairy tale about Goldilocks, right? This porridge is too hot. This porridge is too hot. Oh, this one's just right. Well, exercise falls into the same camp. So we know that not exercising enough definitely has negative health outcomes for sure. That's been shown. And what we're trying to find out at the very, very other extreme ends, there are some negatives associated with that as well. Now, I'm not familiar 100% with the degree of calcification that they found in the coronary arteries, how much exercise they had to do with that. But I can quote one of the things that we found in what's in master's levels athletes. So these are typically patients that are doing a high intensity and high volume. So they're doing multiple hours a day at a pretty high level of efforts. And one of the things that we found in this is you will get a little bit of fibrosis in the heart muscle itself from all the work. And that fibrosis does interfere with the electrical system of the hearts. And master's levels endurance athletes do have a tendency to develop a cardiac arrhythmia called atrial fibrillation. And I can't remember the numbers. Dr. O will know it better than me, but I think the risk is about 3 to 5 times greater than the regular population. My suspicion with this particular study is they're starting to take a look at that far ends, once again, of the U-shaped curve. I think for most of our cardiac patients who are following a fairly reasonable volume of exercise, we're not going to have to worry about that so much. But if you start drifting towards the end, I think you possibly do. That is from the very, very little bit. One of my patients mentioned that study to me. I saw it very, very briefly, but I have not had a chance to look into the details. Paul is a whiz with computers and lit searches, though. Paul, did you find anything to add to that?
The quick read that I'm doing, so this was a study of about 290 men, middle-aged, who are regular exercisers. They're called moderate to higher level athletes. It's an observational study. So that's one that kind of relates what happens to the coronary arteries over a period of follow-up, about 6 years, in relation to reported levels of exertion. So observational studies are helpful to a degree. They tell us about associations, but not necessarily causation. For us to really address, and it is as our questioner kind of brought up, that the suggestion was that if you did higher intensity activities, that might stress out arteries more, more pressure load, maybe that actually damages blood vessels to some degree. So that's the theory. The challenge with observational studies, again, is this really the cause, or is it just something that we're watching as a phenomenon? For us to really kind of look at this, deal with this question of, is higher levels of exercise better or worse than kind of moderate levels of exercise? We actually need those groups to kind of stick to that. Two groups that looks the same, let's follow them over time and see who actually does better or worse. Um, the and that's not what this study does, so it's hard for us to say, hey, go change your behavior on this basis. The other thing that's kind of missing in these sorts of observational studies, of course, is that the vast majority of people that don't exercise, and what do they look like, right? So this is often the finding when we talk about athletes, that we worry that bad things are happening, but compared to the rest of the population that are inactive, their rates of bad things happening are so much lower. But when you focus in on this group and you try to find some risk, Rob, as you've said, when you're really an ultra person, like full marathon, ultra marathoner, then you may cause some scarring on the heart, and may cause some issues. But gosh, the risk of that is so much lower than the non-exercising population. What this says to me, like if you wanted to kind of be conservative in your approach to this, it says, the moderate to vigorous activities that we all espouse, that's pretty good, safe. No one's ever said that that's not a safe thing. There is this interest in doing higher levels or kind of interval exercises. That's very safe as well, and can give you a great workout and maybe higher levels of fitness. And that's really great to do. The super high levels of exercise, well, that's not for everybody. They're a unique breed. And maybe this is one reason that we might kind of shy away from that to some degree. But if we find people that love to do competitive triathlon, etc., we're not going to say don't do that because that's bad for your health. So that'd be our thoughts right now. Thank you. That's a great question, and
Yeah,
thanks for
excellent.
bringing the study to our attention.
Excellent question.
Okay, next is Suzanne. I'm just going to allow your microphone. You just have to unmute your microphone, Suzanne.
No?
There we go. We got you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my question is, with the weather being bad, and well, it's not so bad today, but the problem with the ice, I've had some falls, so I can't do as much walking outside as I normally do. Is there any kind of program on the computer or something for people to walk inside that we can follow to walk inside that you can recommend? Right now, I'm on a cubie. I'm pedaling away under my desk, which is great. But if I could do some alternate walking inside, I think that would be helpful.
So I can make a wonderful suggestion for that. Early days of COVID, when we suspended everything, we were having patients reaching out saying, Rob, I miss you. Help me with my exercise. What should we do? So I actually started exercising on my lunch hour, and we would live stream my exercise sessions. So if you go to our website, www.cardiaccollege.ca, and take a look at, I think it's Cardiac College Online, and you click on that. At the very bottom, you will see a series that is called Walk and Talk with Rob. And
Oh,
what I do is I would do, I think it was about a 30-minute session in our kitchen. The first couple I did in the gym, and everyone said, Rob, I don't have a gym. So I said, okay, I get it. So I moved into the kitchen, pushed the fridge out of the way, moved the dining room table over, and I did a series of sessions, which were largely walking on the spots with a good warm up, cool down opportunity to check your pulse so that you know you're safe. And then also each session, I did a little bit of resistance training. And I think there might be 15 or 18 of them on the website, and that would probably be an excellent place to start.
great. Thank
Good,
you.
good question. Thank you.
Okay, next is Jane Irwin. You just have to unmute your microphone.
Okay, my question is this. I have been doing 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day on my recumbent bike, but I don't understand why sometimes I feel like I'm working just as hard. Sometimes my heart rate is a lot lower than what I'd like it to be. And I'm just not prepared to work any harder. So I don't know why it varies.
So there's a lot of things that can impact on your heart rate. I'll just throw from like an exercise point of view. So, if you've had a good night's sleep, you're a little bit more rested. That makes the exercise a little bit easier. You might find your heart rate is a little bit different. Likewise, if you've had a bad night and you're stressed and you're not doing as well, fighting off a cold, not sleeping as well, that can drive your heart rate up a little bit there. I know medications can impact on that as well. A lot of you will be taking medications that fall into a class called beta blockers. And the beta blockers are drugs that end in LOL. So if one day you exercise close to when you take your beta blocker and the next day you exercise a little bit farther away, that can impact on heart rates as well. So the big thing that we preach, and Paul talked about patterning and behavior. I'm a real big fan of consistency. So keep doing that 30 minutes on the bike, keep doing it. And as long as you're doing the same time and putting the same effort into it, are you going to get the same kind of health benefits? And you will have a little bit of variation in the heart rate. And that's not a bad thing. That's not abnormal. Dr. O, do you want to add anything to that?
I think that's a great explanation, Rob. And then sometimes there's other things in our daily life, things we consume that might make heart rate go up or down. Time of day, I think you might have mentioned that, but there is this kind of circadian or daily rhythm to what we do. Sometimes if you're feeling like you're getting a good workout, I think that we'll listen to that. We don't want you to push outside of the zone that you're comfortable in, Jane, and we're just delighted that you got the 5 days down. That's a big success. Don't fuss with the heart rate so much.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next is Anne. So you just have to unmute your microphone, Anne. Okay, let's go on to William, if you are there, if you could unmute your microphone, go ahead. Okay, we will go on to Terry Strevens. You can unmute your microphone.
Am I on?
There we go.
Okay, great. Robert, I have one question for you. Is that picture a wonderful background picture? Is that real, or is that in your family room?
It's from my villa in the Swiss Alps.
Fantastic, fantastic. Anyway, I thought I would call in. I am a long time family member of the hospital system, and my first interaction with the hospital was in 2006. I've been there a number of times, not so much with the cardiovascular process, although I did have a restenting procedure in 2015 or 16. Seems my RCA wants to continually clog up, and I have no idea why. The medications I take, I only take the LOL and a daily aspirin. Fairly active guy. I've done that all my life. The reason I'm calling in is that for those that are listening that may be wondering, should they take the step to join the program, with the Apple Watch, I am a recipient of that. And I've been on the program for about, 70, 80 days. And it took me probably a month or so of playing with it to get comfortable. Now it's just fabulous. I played pickleball today. I was in the gym yesterday. I played pickleball on Tuesday. I'll be skiing. There is such an array of activities that you can program in as you are starting those activities, whether it's a slow walk, whether it's an indoor cycle, elliptical machines, upright bikes, incumbent bikes. It has it all. And it also has a factor that if you happen to take a fall, you will get notified within 30 seconds. Did you have a fall, sir? I just wanted to say that it's a wonderful program. Dennis Coe was my cardiologist for all those years, and he's moved on into the science area. Guys, you're doing a great job. You got me on the right track as far as the diet and the right type of activities in moderation. The one thing I will ask, and you, Robert, you mentioned that, or Paul, you were talking about smoking and how it takes 28 or 8 to 30 times to do that. For me, in 1981, my wife didn't like me smoking. And she was from the medical area, and I stopped cold turkey. However, I do have some friends that like to dabble in the outside network, and I'm just wondering about cannabis smoking.
One of Paul's favorite topics.
So Terry, thanks very much for sharing your story. It's great, and love to hear that you're staying active and well. What we won't say is that the watch will give you the skills to play pickleball and ski. That's that would be false advertising. But we're delighted that you are being active and monitoring along the way. If that's helping, that's marvelous. On the subject of cannabis, smoking anything is probably a bad idea, like burning stuff and inhaling it. Like that's just one thing of just don't burn and inhale. The conversation about what's in cannabis is a longer discussion. It can go into our list of here's some topics that we'd like to cover off with you, and love to do that. As Rob says, that's one of our favorite topics to talk about, and it's nuanced, but for the main thing is mostly safe, but just don't burn things and inhale them, Terry.
Yeah. I agree. A friend of mine is he got into that. He retired and he got into the habit. He lives up north, and he started to grow his own, and
Nice.
And he has an abundance of that, and he's always requesting me to come over and join him. I keep making excuses. Anyway, it's been wonderful for the dialogue. I turned 80 in April, and I hope I've got another 10 or 15 years to go.
Perfect. Terry, thank you so much for that. That is fantastic.
Okay.
I'm just mindful of the time. So I think maybe Marissa, can we take like maybe 2 more questions and then we'll kind of look to wrap things up? Paul, is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, and we just want to share just a few things after these next couple of questions about next steps with the graduate program and more of these take charge sessions. So stay tuned, but we'll do 2 more quick questions, Marissa.
All right. So Vivian, if you're still there, if you can unmute your microphone, you can ask your question.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi. It's lovely to be watching you guys and listening to you guys. I am actually one of those female Apple recipients. It's my second watch, actually. I'm on the next study with it. I love it. It's amazing. And it definitely helps. It just keeps me aware of what I'm doing. My question is, I guess it relates to, I had a heart attack in 2021, so about a year and a half ago. I had a major heart attack and I had a stent. And then I followed all the programs. I did the cardiac rehab. I did the nutritionist sessions. I also did the therapy sessions through you guys. And all of it is so amazing. And the funny thing is, it's been a good 6 months since I've attended one of these things. I'm hoping that maybe you could do more, because for me, as a 55-year-old woman, it's lonely in my world. I don't know anyone who's been through what I've been through. It is a little bit of anxiety for me. I'm always scared I'm going to have another heart attack. And every time I come off one of these sessions, I always feel normal again. I just feel, I don't know, it's like a recharge. I wish there was more of these things. I wish there was a connection group, or like, what do you do? Do you have anything that maybe somebody like me would be able to connect with to feel maybe a little less fearful and less anxiety about my heart health? Thank you.
That's a perfect segue. So Vivian, if you don't mind, let's take one more question, and then I'm going to answer your question as part of our wrap up, because we do have some very good answers for what you're looking for. But I want to use that as I kind of wrap up. So maybe Marissa, let's take one last final question, and then we'll kind of wrap things up for the evening.
Okay, last question is from Greg House. You just have to unmute your microphone.
Hi, am I on?
Yes,
we can
you
hear
are.
you.
Okay, I'm a cabbage patient in April. I had a triple bypass. Now, if you read Dr. Google, he tells you terrible things about saphenous vein graft failure, as Dr. Google always does. And I'm just wondering if you had any comments or some way to mitigate that, and we, just sort of avoid that.
Paul, I'm going to leave that one to you. That's right up your alley.
Great. Thanks, Greg, for asking the question. And So let's do some reassurance. As Vivian was saying, it's easy to feel alone. It's easy to kind of feel overwhelmed by the experiences that we've been through. Can we offer like a counterpoint to Dr. Google to say we've seen thousands and thousands of people, Rob has seen tens of thousands of people in your career who've been through heart surgery experiences. The vast majority do extremely well over long periods of time. There is great data about vein grafts and artery grafts, the newer ones, and the fact that people will do very, very well for many, many years with a variety of different kinds of bypasses. The key, of course, Greg, that we would all espouse would be to do all the things that we talked about today, and that'll increase your chances of having healthy grafts and a healthy body going forward. So thanks for that. And if you wanted more specific info at another time, then connect with your healthcare doc or a healthcare practitioner or one of us, and we'd be happy to go into a little bit more detail with you. Thanks, Greg.
Absolutely. I think that's a good positive to note to kind of wrap things up on. So, folks, thank you very much for attending. Once again, it was fantastic to be able to do this again, and we're going to try and do more. All right. So for Vivian, I promised I'd kind of wrap her answer up into the summary. So everybody knows as part of our graduate program, and there's a number of services that we offer. So this is one of them, the Take Charge sessions. Dr. No and I have committed, and Marissa and Jessica, who's also helping in the background, to start doing these again on a regular basis. Okay. So in 2 to 3 months, we're going to do another one of these. It's going to be the same as this. It'll be on a Thursday night. It'll be MS Teams. We have a number of topics. We just need to chat between Paul and I. We'll arm wrestle a little bit to see what we're going to cover. So folks, we are going to commit to doing these on a regular basis. All right. For anybody, if you got friends that are like, oh, I wish I caught that session that they gave, or we're going to be recording them, and we will let you guys know what the address is for our YouTube channel so you'll be able to see it. So that's on the Take Charge side of things. One of the other features that we offer in the graduate program is called our Pulse Check. I mentioned that very, very briefly during my session. Pulse Check is an opportunity, if you're a graduate of the program, to come in on a yearly basis to have a repeat fitness test. Right, that is something that we've largely maintained for the last couple of years. It was on hold for a little while, but that's been going strong again. All right, so to participate in or receive a Pulse Check test, ideally you need to be exercising regularly. You need to get a referral form, bring it to one of your docs, family doc, cardiologist, have them fill it out. Basically, they'll say, hey, I just laid my eyes on so-and-so. They're good for a test. Send it in, and then we'll be happy to set you up. And then one of the cardiac rehab supervising team will sit down or meet with you over the phone and go over results and exercise guidelines. So that's going as well. The other couple of things that we have on hold, but we're kind of hoping to get starting up again in the spring or the summer, are the graduate exercise classes. So Monday mornings and Tuesday evenings, we used to open up the track for graduates to come in and take advantage of the facility. You would come in, do your exercise. You could use the track, the treadmills, the bike, the weights. It was supervised by one of our exercise teams. So if you had any questions, they could help you out with that. And it's medically supervised. There's a small fee for use. We're still on hold with that one because of all the infection in the community, but we're really kind of hoping to get that up and running again in the spring or the summer. So stay tuned for that one. Make sure that you're registered to get our newsletters, as I think many of you are. When that opens up, we'll let you know. As part of the exercise class, there's a couple of peer support groups, Vivian, in particular, that are associated with the graduate programming as well. So these are peer-led groups of former patients of the program. And they meet typically on a monthly basis. There's one group that's led by, what's his name? Emil, on Tuesday evenings. And then Lee, who I think I saw her in the session today, also runs a support session on Wednesday afternoons. We had to place them on hold because of COVID, but we're hoping that once things start opening up and we start being able to re-allow all our graduate services to get starting, that will get going in the spring or the summer. I do not have a firm date, right? So don't say, Rob, what day? I don't have one. All right, but the hospital wants to get it going. Paul and the entire team here at Cardiac Rehab want to get that stuff up and running again. It'll happen. You just have to give us a little bit of time to get it there. Okay, so that's with all the graduate services. And Marissa, who's also a cardiac rehab supervisor, just like me, did I miss anything with the graduate stuff, Marissa, that you might add to that? Covered it all?
Yeah, I think those are the main ones that we're hoping to get back going at some point, along with runners with heart, maybe in the nicer weather, hopefully.
Perfect. Okay, so sign up to the newsletter because that's how we're all going to be communicating this. I also know that there's going to be a few extra speaker events. We're going to do the Take Charge one, as I said. Dr. O and myself, maybe another speaker in the next 2 to 3 months. Paul, you had mentioned that there's a few other sessions that are coming up in February. Did you want to maybe speak to those a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And I did show in my kind of last slide of my presentation an event in February. And again, we can send it out via email to the group, I think, Marissa, that on Thursday, February the 9th, I believe, we'll be doing a session on cardiovascular risk prediction for women, and that'll be over the noon hour. And again, we'll let you know about that as well as other ones that are coming up.
That's great, Paul.
One last thing I'll mention is on our Cardiac College website, under Women with Heart Online, the 2 sessions are listed for February 9th and February 13th. To join those sessions, you can go onto our Cardiac College website, and the red box, Women with Heart Online, the 2 that are upcoming, you can join here. I'll also send a note in the newsletter as well, just before those dates, so that you have the links to join those sessions. Okay. Last thing I'll mention is for the Heracles study, the email address for contact is in the Q&A. So if you click on the Q&A box, Jessica put the Heracles study email in there. If you can't find it, then always just reach out to one of us and we can always forward it to you as well.
Perfect. On that note, Dr. O, thank you very much for joining us. I know the graduates are always thrilled to be able to listen to you speak. And I'm going to sign off for the night, and hopefully we see everybody again when we do our next couple of sessions in the coming months. Thank you, everybody. Over and out.